Welcome to this week's broadcast. I'm Jim Richards, and I'm going to share some things with you that are going to be great tools for making your marriage wonderful. Wouldn't you just love for the way you felt when you first fell in love? Wouldn't you just love for that to be the way you live every single day? Well, you know something? It can not only have all of those good elements, but it can actually have some depth and some quality that's even better than it was when you were just crazy passionate over one another. Man, this is one of those messages you want to sit down with your mate, you want to watch together, you want to talk over, you want to share with any of your ministry groups. This is something you can use in marriage counseling. It's one of the cornerstones to what I used in my personal relationship with my wife, but it's also one of the cornerstones that I have used in marriage counseling for 40 years. And I'm telling you something, this is going to be a tool that's going to change your world. You're going to love it. Man, wouldn't it be great if you felt as special right now as you did back when you and your mate were dating and courting and trying to attract each other and trying to draw each other into a relationship? Well, I want to tell you something. In my new series, Staying in Love, I'm going to show you how to make one another feel special, how to bring back all of those special feelings and then some. This is going to be a life-changing, marriage-changing series that you and your spouse can listen to together and stay in love. Man, I'll tell you what, I don't know about you, but I like to feel special. And let me just say, that really pertains more to when I'm at home than anywhere else. You know, to be honest, you know, people ask me sometimes, what is it like to have traveled all over the world, spoke to thousands of people, seen all kinds of miracles, you know, seen the sick healed, seen blind eyes. What does that make you feel like? Well, I'll tell you something. That does do something for me, but the real truth is that really isn't where I get my greatest amount of satisfaction in life. You know, my two sources of great satisfaction is primarily, of course, my relationship with the Lord, just spending time with God, knowing that I'm loved, knowing that I'm accepted, and having a heavenly Father that will teach me and instruct me and lead me and help me make this journey through life. I mean, that's the ultimate. That's as good as it gets. But you know something? We need somebody with skin on. You know, we're flesh and blood. We need another flesh and blood person in our life so that we're not alone, so that we're feeling connected to somebody. And there is no place that makes me feel special anymore than in my marriage. There's no one, no circumstance, nothing makes me feel as special as my wife makes me feel whenever she puts forth the effort just to do the daily things that she does. And I'm going to tell you something. You want to be at a place to where home is where you feel best, where home is the place where you are the most satisfied, where home is where you feel more special than you do anywhere else. Because I'm going to tell you something, if you don't feel more special at home than you do somewhere else, eventually you will find yourself going somewhere else to feel special, and before long, home will be falling apart and you won't have a great relationship. You know, when I do weddings, which you know, I don't really do weddings anymore. And I didn't do many weddings when I was a pastor. Usually our pastoral team took care of that. But for years, I did the premarital counseling. And I would do premarital counseling. And, you know, I think I've shared this with you before. You know, 50% of the people that went through my premarital counseling actually ended up not getting married. And some people said, well, boy, that's scary. Why would anybody want to come to your premarital counseling? Simple. 50% of the people get a divorce anyhow. And those 50% of the people that ended up not getting married saved themselves the pain, the shame, the degradation, the humiliation of getting in marriage, giving their hearts to somebody else, and it falling apart and then having hurt and pain and rejection and anger to deal with for the rest of their life. You know, I'll tell you, great marriage counseling doesn't always build a great marriage. Sometimes great premarital counseling breaks people up because they come to the realization, I am not in a relationship with the person that I thought I'm in a relationship with. And I'll tell you something, there wasn't anything phenomenal. There were some key things that I did that was very different, I guess. But the most phenomenal thing that happened in these sessions was I got people to talk about things that they really didn't talk about. See, most people come in and they think they're talking, they think they're communicating. They're not doing that. They're doing a sales job. They're selling themselves to the other person. And they're really not communicating. They're not working through the issues that they're going to end up fighting about after they get married. But we don't want to get off into that part. Here's what we want to get off into. Early in the relationship or early in the marriage, you are doing everything you can to make your mate feel special. Now, you're really probably doing it for the wrong reasons, because the reason most people is trying to make their mate feel special is so that they will look at you and think that you're a wonderful person. Well, I want to tell you something. That's not love, that's manipulation. You know, last week we talked about God's definition of love. And I'll tell you something. Love is such a paradox. And remember, all truth exists in a paradox. And until you see the paradox, you don't really see and understand the truth. And you won't really see and grasp the paradox of a truth until you believe it in your heart. As long as you just know it in your mind, it's going to be this way or that way. And there's no way to understand how both sides of the paradox really come together to create a truth. But you see, love, the paradox of love is this. The moment I treat you a certain way to get something back from you, I am no longer functioning in love. I am now functioning in manipulation. But the paradox is this. I know that if I treat you in love, you probably will treat me better. You probably will bring something back to me. So the paradox is that can't be my motivation, but the reality of it is it will probably be what happens if you have a capacity to give and receive love. And let me just tell you something. So many people have been so wounded, they've been so rejected, they've gone through so much pain, they've really given up their capacity to give and receive genuine love. And I want to tell you something, many times when you enter into a relationship with somebody, you have to enter that relationship saying, I will love you until you have the capability to give back genuine love. And I'll tell you something, we all have to do that at times for our mate, when our mate hits a place in their life where they're struggling with the ability to show love. Or, you know, in my case, I adopted some children. And when I adopted these kids, they were dysfunctional. They had pain in their life. They had been through a lot of painful and difficult things. And I'll tell you something, I can remember thinking about my kids, I call them my kids because they are my kids now that I've adopted them. But I can remember thinking about these kids thinking, I don't even know if me and Brenda can get married and our marriage survive these kids. And I'm not saying they were horrible kids, but I'm just saying they had issues because of what they came out of. But I will never forget pondering this and thinking about this and making the decision that out of who I was in Jesus, I would just determine to love them until they had the capacity to love me back. And, you know, for each one of my kids, that happened at different times in their life. And for one of them, it was 17 years before we ever started developing a loving relationship. But you know what? It was still worth it in the end, even though it was miserable going through it. But of all the people that we should be committed to loving unconditionally, it really should be our spouse. Excuse me. Now, when we get married, and I always share this at every wedding that I do. Every time I do a wedding, one of the key things that I deal with and present is the pearl of great price. And I know the pearl of great price is really about Jesus, but there's a principle of the pearl of great price. And the principle of the pearl of great price is this, is that you find something that is so precious to you that you are willing to sell or give up everything else to have this pearl that is of such incredible value. Well, in the pearl of great price, or with that principle, that's really what you're doing when you get married. Now, that should be what you do when you come to Jesus. You should look at the life that God's offering you, the love that God's offering you, the salvation that God's offering you, and you should say, you know what, there's nothing else I want more than I want this. I'm giving up everything else. And I tell you, when that's how you come into the kingdom, it works for you. Your life is great as long as you maintain that attitude. Your life is great, and really the pieces always come together for you. It's when you give that up and you start wanting to say, "No, I'm going to go back and get some of these other things because I want Jesus, but I want all this other stuff too." But when you get married, you're functioning from the principle of the pearl of great price. You're coming to your mate and you're saying, "You are so precious to me. You are so valuable to me. I am giving up all other relationships. I'm giving up all other possibilities of relationship because I want you because you're so special." And everybody starts out relating to one another as the pearl of great price. Now, let me tell you something. If that's not what happens, if that's not what's happening in you, you're dating, and that's not what is happening with you, you better not get married just thinking that one day, with the blind hope that one day they might change, because you can't marry somebody based on the hope that they will change. Again, that puts you over into that manipulation mode. And, one of the things, when I went into my marriage, when Brenda and I got married, I was very honest. I am an incredibly objective person. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. But I can remember evaluating the things in our marriage or things in our relationship that I didn't like. And there were things I didn't like, just like there were things with me that she didn't like. And I can remember making a conscious decision and asking myself, can I love her for the rest of our lives if none of this changes? And can I have a good marriage if none of this changes that I don't like? Can I treat her special if none of this changes? And, I made the determination that I could, and that was the basis of the commitment that I was making to her. Now, because Brenda and I talked through so many things, because there was really very few surprises for us. And again, this is how I developed my premarital counseling program, was there should be no surprises. There should be no relationship surprises after you get married. And if there are, you can't blame it on your mate. Most people's like, well, my mate, they deceived me. They didn't show me this side of them. I got news for you. If you didn't see that side of it, it's because you probably didn't want to see that side of them, unless they're an incredibly deceptive, corrupt person, and that's very rarely the case. It usually takes two people to get into a bad situation. So when Brenda and I got married, we talked about stuff. We worked through stuff. We faced stuff. We fought about stuff. There were issues that we faced right off the bat, and there were issues that we knew we were going to face that we were not yet having to deal with. But we came into marriage, and honestly, in over 30 years of marriage, there have been very few surprises. The only surprises you should have would be when you're pleasantly surprised where things get better, not where you're surprised and things get worse. But now listen, don't sit there and say, well, we didn't do that, we didn't have that, our marriage stinks and it can't ever get better, and yang, 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 all that kind of stuff. Because it really doesn't matter where you are in your relationship. If you want it to be good, if both people want it to be good, it can start changing right now. And one of the keys is to make your mate feel special. So, I remember before Brenda and I got married, one of the things that I told her is, I said, I am going to spend the rest of my life making you feel special. And she looked at me and she said, that's my commitment to you. I am going to spend the rest of my life making you feel special. And it almost became a race, if you will, to see who could do the most to make the other one feel the most loved or the most special. And even though we've had hard times in our marriage, even though we've gone through some real difficulties, and there have been times, where we've looked at each other and wondered, will our marriage make it through what we're facing right now? I mean, we've faced hard times just like anybody has, but we always came back to, and one of us would always come to our senses and say, I'm gonna make you feel special. And one of us would always, and one or the other of us would always be the one that would get things back on track, because we would return to that original commitment. See, well, that's what it means to have a pearl of great price. Now, if you know something, if this is not where your marriage is, you can sit down with your mate and you can say, you know something, I've got the greatest idea I've ever had, but it's going to take two of us to make it work. And here's my idea. I want you to feel incredible. But I know that, you just tell them, I know that I can't do that if I don't feel incredible. And really, you can start talking about what it would make, or what you would have to do, what it would take to make one another feel special. And you can start down this path. And I tell you, it doesn't take long to totally turn things around. So what happens is we get married, our mate is our pearl of great price. Now, somewhere along the way, and it always happens, somewhere along the way, one or the other does something selfish, self-centered, or inconsiderate. And when that happens, then there's an offense. You know the word offense? An offense is something that causes you to stumble. So your mate does something and it hurts you, it disappoints you, they wrong you in some way, or maybe you're just being oversensitive, you know, who can say? But it causes you to stumble in this journey of making this loving relationship. Now, usually, that'll happen a time or two or whatever, but at some point, the way that offense works is you say, you know something, you stopped making me feel special, so I'm going to stop making you feel special. And now we're starting to use punishment and negative manipulation. See, in the beginning, in the dating phase, we were using positive manipulation. Now we're using negative manipulation. And we're using pain to try to force the other person to do what we want them to do, or do really what they should do, honestly. But you can never approach it from the perspective of obligation and get what you want. Now, I want you to understand something. Pain and pleasure is one of the basic components that determines every decision that we're ever going to make. You see, God created us in such a way that we are drawn to pleasure. God delights in our pleasure. We are supposed to, the Bible says God has given us everything for our enjoyment or for our pleasure. And we don't have to get in sin to have pleasure. We don't have to do destructive things to have pleasure. I want you to understand that. But we're also wired to avoid pain. So we will inherently always gravitate toward pleasure, and we will always move away from or draw back from pain. So, in the beginning, when we're trying, even if it's manipulation, if it's pleasure, if it's positive manipulation, if you will, which I don't think you should use any kind of manipulation, you should use motivation, but not manipulation, and there is a difference. Manipulation is when you're trying to get somebody to do something against their will, or whenever you're trying to trick somebody into doing something for you, when you're trying to deceive somebody into doing something for you, that's manipulation. Motivation is when you are encouraging someone to do what they have the desire to do. And there's a big difference. But here's the deal. The moment you start using pain to try to get your spouse to be and do what you want them to do, they are going to start moving away from you. They're going to start pulling away. And I'm telling you, they're going to start looking for some other place to feel special. Now, I'll tell you something about people. I know this about myself. I've always told my wife this. I've told my congregations this over the years. I've told people this in marriage counseling, and I've told all of my kids this. Anybody will do anything if all the factors are right. So a lot of people say, well, I would never commit adultery. I would never do this. Let me tell you something. Anybody will do anything if all of the factors are right. Now, Jesus, in his teaching about, we think it's teaching about divorce, but it's actually a teaching about putting your spouse away, which is different than divorce. And in Matthew 5:32, Jesus said, I say to you, whoever puts his wife away causes her to commit adultery. Now, this, in most versions of the Bible, it's going to say divorce, but it's not divorce. It's to put away. And to put a wife away is really to put them out of your home, to treat them hard, to alienate them from you. but not actually divorce them because you don't want to be the one to get the divorce, and you want them to be the one that's forced into adultery. And it's a manipulation game of control, and it's a way of making the other party look like the one that's guilty. But when Jesus goes on and begins to talk about the real cause of divorce, he points out that divorce is an issue of hardness of heart. Now, whenever we begin to use pain, negative motivation to manipulate our mate, we put them in a position where they have to harden their heart to survive with us, because we now become the source of pain. And whenever we alienate ourselves from our mate, or whenever we bring this pain into our life, we really put them into a situation where they are lacking the fulfillment and the joy and the pleasure and the relationship and the intimacy that they once had with you. You are no longer the person that they married, and you're no longer this person that was making them feel special. So now this person starts looking around at other places, and not necessarily looking to have an affair, but just looking for other places to feel special. So you want to realize, to divorce-proof your marriage, you want to be willing to make your mate feel special, make them feel loved, make them feel valuable. And that's really what love is. Love is value. And so it's not just that you have value for that other person, but you express value to the other person, because everybody wants to be loved. Everybody wants to feel valuable and precious. In fact, you can't be normal if you don't feel valuable and precious. You'll never be the person that you hope to be. You'll never be the person that you want to be. You know, the Bible tells us something so interesting, and it's one of those things I think that we tend to one of the scriptures we tend to misinterpret. But the Bible tells us that open rebuke is better than secret love. Secret love is value, preciousness that is not expressed. It's held in. So the truth is, I am making my spouse feel worse than she would feel getting rebuked out in public in front of everybody by not complimenting, not pointing out the things that she does or that he does, by not expressing my love, my value from. The truth is, I'm making them feel worse than they would feel if they were experiencing just open rebuke and open criticism. Let me tell you something. Everybody needs to feel special. Everybody wants to feel special. But of all the places that it needs to happen, where feeling special needs to happen, it needs to happen in our relationship with our mate. And you know, if we don't do this, then before long, somebody noticed them at work. Somebody starts complimenting them at work. Somebody starts thinking their jokes are funny. Somebody starts acknowledging their strengths. Somebody starts noticing little things about them. And before long, they're feeling special like they used to feel with you. And that creates an association. And they start feeling all the things that they once felt with you, but now it's all focused on somebody else. Let me tell you something. You need to enter into a pact with your spouse, and it needs to be a pact of preciousness. I am going to make you feel special. Listen, I'll be back with a mentoring moment in just a moment. You know, I want to invite you to check out my book, We Still Kiss. It's not the special offer for this month, even though we'll probably offer it in a special package if you're getting our magazine or if you're checking out our website. We Still Kiss was a book written for people to use to solve real problems, to really work things through. As a matter of fact, the way most couples use We Still Kiss is every week they will read the same chapter, and every week they will just talk about not just what they learned from the chapter, but they'll talk about the questions that emerge about their own relationship and their own marriage, and they'll find things that they've never really talked about and never really worked out. We Still Kiss is an incredible book. It's about how Brenda and I have stayed in love for all of these years. It's a great book to use for a small group ministry. If you've got an impact group that's working on relationships, I encourage you to use We Still Kiss. I'm telling you, it is a life-changing book, and you'll find yourself kissing 30 years from now. Beating the Odds is a 6 CD series all about staying together, staying happy, staying together, staying in love, staying together, enjoying it. Not just staying together just to stay together. And in this thing, I'm going to give you a lot of tools to work with. I'm going to give you some homework assignments. I'm going to give you some inspirational material. I'm going to give you some how-to steps. And I'm going to give you what you need so that you can develop yourself as an individual and grow together into an incredible relationship. Man, I've got a great exercise for you to do. It's an exercise that I use in marriage counseling, premarital counseling. I use it in my own marriage. This is an exercise that almost every time I teach about relationships, I encourage people to do this. So you may have heard me share this before. I go into great detail about how to do this in my book, We Still Kiss. You see, one of the problems is oftentimes we do for other people what we wish they would do for us. And so we're putting forth effort to make them feel special, and then they don't appreciate it. We get our feelings hurt and we don't understand. Well, the problem is they're not us. There's something else that's important to them. And so I encourage people to do what I call swapping the top 5 list. And the top 5 list is really, really simple. And it's where you sit down with your spouse and you say, you know what, I really do want to make you feel loved. I really want to make you feel special. So we're going to do something. And we're going to talk about it. I want to know the top 5 things that make you feel special or make you feel loved. And both of you write a list of top 5 things. Now, it can't be something that violates the other person's will. It can't be something that degrades them or dominates them or violates their choice. And so there's some things you don't have the right to ask, and you don't have the right to force anything. So you got to make sure it's something that your spouse can do, feel good about themselves, and make sure it's not something that hurts the way that they feel about you. You know, if you ask you to do your spouse to do something that's degrading to them, you might get your momentary needs met, but I'm gonna tell you something, you'll never be really loved, and you'll never be treated as special, and your spouse will become more and more resistant to you. But you write down the top 5 things that they can do. And you got to realize some people are not comfortable saying, this is what I want you to do. Some people think you should be able to figure this out. Well, you know, just like I tell Brenda, I'm not that smart, I don't want to figure it out. I want to get it right. I want to get it right the first time. And if you don't tell me what makes you feel special, I'm not going to know what it is, and I'm not going to get it right. And so you make your list and you swap lists. It's just that simple. And then you take that list and you pray over it, and then you just do what's on the list. You walk it out. And I want to tell you something. These desires and these needs change as life changes, so you got to swap lists pretty often.